Hello everyone, it's Jess Conto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and we're getting into the mid-50s on our journey through John Ford. It's 1955, and we'll be talking about The Long Gray Line. And joining me for this episode is my wife, Jess. Jess, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Shane.
She has been on a lot of these John Ford episodes, but not too many more.
I was just going to ask, what's the last year that he made a movie?
76.
Oh my god.
But it was like a decade gap.
Okay.
He made like a documentary in 1976, or at least came out in 1976. But it looks like he stopped really directing in the mid-60s. So,
okay.
We're in the twilight of John Ford's filmmaking career as we're getting there. But for those who haven't tuned into the show before, we have 3 segments. We have coming attractions for September 13th. Yes, it's going to be almost halfway through September by the time this episode comes out. Crazy of the year of our Lord 2024. And 2020 Ford is almost coming to an end. But we have the coming attractions, then our feature film, and then we have a couple recommendations for you. But let's get started with our coming attractions, which this is an interesting little weekend as we have Speak No Evil, which is a American remake of a pretty well-received international horror film, this time with James McAvoy. I guess they made it Scottish. So exotic. We have Kevin Smith has a new film coming out, and a Lionsgate action thriller that actually looks like it could be some fun, with Dave Bautista in it, and Drew McIntyre.
Oh.
Speaking of Scotland.
Speaking of the Scots.
Speaking of the Scots. But we're both more excited for a fun, very emotional little film that we actually got to see a month early. Jess, why are you excited for My Old Ass?
I'm excited for everyone to see it because they will not have to deal with what we dealt with going into the screening.
It was a bit messy.
Yeah.
But
whoever that lady was, I hope she and her daughter make up because not all mother-daughter pairings were. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. It hits all those millennial/Gen Z notes.
For a film,
it took some twists I didn't expect, which is nice.
For a film that's under 90 minutes, shy of 90 minutes, it packs so many laughs.
It's lean.
Good themes, and emotional moments where almost the whole entire theater was tearing up and crying.
There's one scene in particular that just chef's kiss. Just beautiful.
And the cast is incredible. Like what the hell's her? The main actress, the young woman who's like the younger version of Elliot, is so good. And then Aubrey Plaza is not in the film anywhere near as much as you probably would think and would hope.
But it's fine.
But the way that they utilize her as a character is really good. And there's really great performances, great dynamics. It's definitely a film worth checking out, and even if it was before we saw it, this still would have been the film I was most excited about, despite the fact that I've already seen the 4:30 movie too. Like, I was excited for Kevin Smith going back to basics a little bit.
I enjoyed that too, but I laughed a lot.
Yeah, and
I cried.
I am legitimately excited for the Killer's Game because that actually looks like a fun premise, and Dave Bautista seems like he's really leaning into it. I don't know how to feel about Speak No Evil. I'm so sick of those trailers.
Oh, God.
I can't. I watched it 4 times in 2 days when I saw a bunch of movies in a couple days.
If there's more than one trailer out, since you know it's close to opening weekend or whatever, like, please alternate them because it's so redundant. And then at that point, you're just like...
I'm just happy that they just released a new Wicked trailer.
Oh, yeah.
So
God, that one was getting old, too.
That one actually, that was one of the ones that grew on me.
I liked it. I loved
Wicked. But just watch it. And also, it's a long trailer.
Yeah, 4 times. It's like, you know where this is going. I need variety.
Yes.
That's why I have like 6 hyperfixations at one time.
What was weird, and before I end this tangent, was that Beetlejuice Beetlejuice the trailer didn't play for like 3 weeks before the movie came out.
Yeah.
It just disappeared.
Yeah.
But I think it's doing well for itself going into this weekend. But let's jump in to our feature film. So let's read our synopsis. In 1898, Irish immigrant Martin Maher is hired as a civilian employee at West Point, where during a 50-year career, he rises to the rank of NCO and instructor. Now, here's some background for the film. This film was shot in CinemaScope and Technicolor. Definitely looked it. Mm-hmm. Based on the life of Marty Maher from his autobiography, Bringing Up the Brass. So this was based off of his own autobiography.
And it tells you that, too, that it's a true story.
Stars Tyrone Power, only a couple years before he tragically died way too young, and Maureen O'Hara, who is one of John Ford's favorite actors to work with.
Forever.
Yes, who lived for more than twice as long as Tyrone Power did.
Good for her.
Irish immigrant at West Point. This film was, a lot of it was shot at West Point, so they actually shot on location. The long gray line is used to refer to all graduating recruits at West Point.
Because they wear gray uniforms? Mm-hmm. I was really afraid when I heard gray uniforms. I was like, oh no, is it the Civil War? Because I looked up nothing before then. And then it was West Point. I was like...
And then young Robert Francis, who is 25 years old, who got pretty high billing in the film, third billing below Power and Maureen O'Hara, died tragically at 25 years old shortly after this film.
It was just well, I guess Maureen O'Hara was like, no, it's not cursed, but that's sad.
Very sad.
I guess everybody smoked and drank a lot, and that's probably not great for your heart. But
well, I think it was it was a car accident.
That's sad too.
But Jess, what were your general thoughts on the long gray line?
I thought it was interesting. He definitely lived a very interesting life. Unfortunately, longer than the actor who portrayed him.
Yeah.
The ending was very sweet. Mm-hmm. No spoilers, I guess, but I thought that was...
Well, we do spoil.
Oh, okay. Well, it was a very fitting tribute at the end. I mean, you can kind of see it coming a mile away, but I thought that was very sweet and tender one. And it's cute, too, the little... Not cute, but, like, it's very... heartwarming to see the community that came around him, too. Because he came there with, like, nothing. I mean, he came there with less than nothing because he immediately was in debt. He starts accruing debt. They greet him with some nice Irish slurs coming right up. And
yep.
Yeah. So.
And then...
Lest we forget that was in the No Irish Need Apply time.
He dropped a whole entire tray of plates because somebody else was scrubbing the floor on a ramp.
Unlike OSHA, never heard of her because it's the 1800s.
Well, and the person scrubbing at the worst possible time should have been responsible for that.
Why during the dinner hour? There was a lot wrong with that.
It's the same reason why I get mad at the state of New Jersey for doing road work during rush hour.
He gets his block knocked off, too, and he falls into a bunch of dishes, and it was the same thing. Like, oops, more debt for that.
Yep.
They did use the word taurine, which I really enjoyed, because my mom and I saw some fancy taurines, and that was cool to see it used in the wild.
I think my general thoughts, I guess the one main negative I had with this movie off the bat is it's long in the tooth. Like, I feel like...
It's Grandpa's story time.
It was a close to 2 hour and 20-minute movie, and I don't feel like it needed to be.
No.
Like...
Dude, there's so much.
I feel like... So, like... Sure, there's a lot of plot that happens over the course of the 50-year story.
I mean, it's a lifetime.
So, it's a lifetime. But... There's certain scenes where I feel like they probably could have tightened them up a little bit.
They spend a lot of time on him harassing his wife-to-be. Like, a lot of time with him just talking at her. And holding her verbally hostage. And she's clearly not.
I feel like this could have at least been 10, maybe 15 minutes shorter.
Oh, yeah.
But I wouldn't say it had bad pacing. Because the thing is, there's a lot going on. Mm-hmm. John Ford really knows how to pace a film. And also, there's some impressive shots of, like... I will say right off the bat that I am not somebody that's super into military stuff. I would... Unless I am drafted, I would never consider joining the military. Mm-hmm. It's not my kind of thing. I respect those who choose to defend our country, and the stuff that they have to go through to be able to do that is...
The training is brutal at this point.
Brutal and unbelievable. And I've never been one to be, like, super absorbed into, like, the fraternity of the military kind of idea. This is one of the first films that really helped me understand it. And I actually was, like, by the end of the film, like, I really respect the community that West Point had created and that Marty developed over that time.
They clearly love each other. Like, it's very sweet.
And I feel like this is the first film that I really watched where I'm like, okay, I really get this. And John Ford, who generally is showing off vistas and beautiful landscapes, it's not landscapes here, it's showing off military. And there's, like, big scenes, like the final scene where they're doing this whole entire march for him. It's such a big CinemaScope wide angle shots and big in terms of how it's portraying everything.
I mean, there's gotta be, like, what, 1,000 recruits in the line?
Yes, there's a lot of people, and those are big sequences because most of the film is very intimate. You never once see battle.
It's in his house.
Like, that's the thing, because, like, this goes through World War I and World War II, but we never see battle because Marty never leaves, which is very interesting because one of the films that we did together about the guy who winds up being stuck in his own town.
That's right.
And then in the late third act winds up going on this crazy mission and stuff.
Romp through.
This never, like, jumped plot to that kind of thing. It was perfectly fine being about this man, about his relationship, about his legacy, and the generations of people who he made an impact on.
In the community.
And I'll admit, I feel like what really spoke to me is that the way that Marty saw West Point is how I see working at Ryder, which I'm only on year 9. I would like to get to 50 years working there because that's going to be when I'm going to be allowed to retire. At this rate.
Oh God, they have a countdown on my HR dashboard. 53 years. I'm like, don't have a countdown. Now I'm sad.
It's how it captures, like, how much one person and to a little bit of a bigger extent his family made such an impact. And I never once felt like this film felt too saccharine or melodramatic.
No.
It carried a reasonable, effective, and emotive kind of tone to it.
I feel like it was very, what is that, the Greatest Generation? I feel like it was very Greatest Generation. It was not effusive in their love at all times, but kind of reserved, but also, like, you could tell they cared about each other.
Well, except when Marty was grabbing ass. He kept slapping Maureen O'Hara's ass. And there was a couple times where she was like,
and she's I'm pregnant. I'm like, why is this a surprise?
So their dynamic, which Tyrone Power, who was in The Mark of Zorro, not the first one, but probably the most famous one from like 1940, somewhere around there, he is so charismatic. And I 100% bought him as a man who was progressively getting older through this film. Like, I never questioned him.
He's an Irish guy. I think the Irish are known for being charismatic and friendly.
Well, I feel like...
And talking a lot.
It's tough to age... He had to age up a character 50 years.
Yeah, that's a lot. They're like gray hair, glasses.
Not gonna lie, he did look a little off when he was, like, super young. Because I'm just like... Because at this point, he was, like, 40. And he was playing probably, like, a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
And, like, maybe that wasn't the best. But, like, at least he looked... Tyrone Power is relatively youthful looking, but the way that he played this character, and he goes through a lot in this film, and there's a lot of different kinds of emotions. You see him being rambunctious when he's younger, being charismatic swindler like Owen, and like telling, I sent $5 back to me pappy.
Borrowing money
to send to his pappy, except the fact that, like, he kept it, obviously, because he wasn't making money. Maureen O'Hara, I feel like I've seen in a couple films now from John Ford, and I think she's a fantastic actor. She reminds me a lot of Carrie Condon, who I'm also a huge fan of as an actor. So maybe like that kind of vibe that she brings to it. All Irish women aren't alike, Jess. So what was interesting is like she has to do a lot of flat affect for like the first 20 minutes she's in this movie because she's playing.
Guy tells her to not.
If I'm not, there was Ward Bond's character, the captain,
and then like she's immediately like, he told me not to do anything. Kiss me.
Actually, you know what? That was the one moment where I felt like it was a bit silly.
I was like,
where she like threw her arms back and was like.
And like waiting for him. I'm like, girl, you're like an inch from his lips. Just kiss him.
Yep.
At this point, he's clearly into you. He spent the last 3 months just
harassing
speaking
you.
At you. Constantly.
Speaking at you. I love their dynamic and how it evolves over time.
Marriage is nice.
Obviously, they have the big emotional moment of the birth and death of their baby.
In like 12 hours.
Yep. And I feel like that's the first time in this movie where you realize this is where this film can go. And the moments where you see Marty coming home cold and not responding to his wife and coming in and going straight to the yearbook and looking at the face of the young men who died.
That was sad.
And that was such an effective way of conveying that emotion. And those moments in particular, this has such a great widespread ensemble of actors. The young Sundstrom Jr., Robert Francis, he's the one who passed away, who was 25 years old. Oh
God, that's sad. Yeah, red, just like his dad. Because you had red hair, and that's how the nicknames worked back then.
Donald Crisp, who played Old Martin, the father-in-law.
What a name.
I
did not like him.
He was kind of an asshole.
He's like that traditional parent.
Yep. And Donald Crisp was in Birth of a Nation. He was acting early on into cinema.
A while.
Yeah, well, he was an older actor in this movie in 1955. Ward Bond, which classic. I'm going to be very sad because he won't be in too many more. Because I've been doing these Ward Bond sightings this whole entire time, but he dies 5 years after this movie came out. So, but you had like Harry Carey Jr. coming in with a small role as Dwight D. Eisenhower. It shows like Omar Bradley graduating, Dwight D. Eisenhower graduating from West Point in 1915, right before World War I, and then realizing,
you read about.
Yes. Or watched in movies like Patton.
Or heard your grandparents complain about.
And this film, I feel like, does a good job of showing a more varied perspective on military. Because there are moments where it's like questioning, like, why? Why are we just sending these young men off to slaughter? And Marty has to process that. And it's interesting because Mary's usually the one. Like, it took Marty a long time in this story to fully appreciate what this community was. And Mary, very interestingly, was the one who kept trying to help him realize that, because he wanted to, after they got together, go back to Ireland, buy a pub, make some good money, because Irish
his dad
people.
And his brother.
And she surprised him by bringing them to America. And it's that similar kind of story because Denny, his brother, went off to New York City, was making
stupid money.
Buku bucks.
He had a car.
Yeah, it was, which is a fun scene when they show up. It's like,
yeah, and comes puttering in.
Yeah, you have that same kind of dynamic like in a film like It's a Wonderful Life, where George Bailey's the one who's stuck in this place, but by the end of the film realizes it's not being stuck. He's making a real impact for a community of people.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of...
He tries to move to New York and goes back.
Just like this.
Yeah.
So, because there's multiple times where Marty's like, I'm gonna...
Well, that's what I mean. In this film, they go to New York and then they grab Baby Red and...
Which that was very sad with that whole dynamic with the Sundstrom family.
I mean, you can tell they're close, though. I mean, they came back, they brought the baby, and when the son, goes to West Point and then is deployed to World War II, he gives, Mary a kiss on the forehead. And I have to admit, I forgot Mary's name. I'm like, it's 50-50 shot if it's Mary or not. I'm going to swing with Mary.
There's one point towards the end of the film where Marty tells off this senator.
Yeah, good for him. Honestly, good for him, because didn't he say the uniforms are outdated?
Yep.
Yeah.
And he, rails into him about why West Point's so important. It's like, you need people who know what they're doing out there to lead. West Point was about creating leaders. School. And, the West Point was around before the Civil War. Mm-hmm. You had the likes of Robert E. Lee and Ulysses S. Grant, in the same, which notoriously Grant was not top of his class, but Robert E. Lee was.
He was an interesting president, too. I don't think he was a very good one, but... And the S doesn't stand for anything. Anyway, that's my Grant facts, but yeah.
Grant facts. Somebody, someday, I guess, will eventually make a Ulysses S. Grant biopic.
I remember, and I could be making this up, and just my memory's fallible, but I remember reading that, he wasn't that interesting of a person, and that's why.
Well, it didn't stop them from making a Dick Cheney one.
Oh, God. No, he's interesting, he's just...
Dick Cheney himself is not interesting.
Perhaps living on pure spite.
But, that was one of my biggest criticisms of Vice, was, Dick Cheney, the character, was not interesting.
I want to see the guys he shot.
But you have...
His daughter's life got interesting.
This whole story, from start to finish, is so miraculous. And there's a few of John Ford's films where he just, found a particular person who had a really special life and was able to bring that to life. Mm-hmm. And this isn't a Western, this isn't a war film. Mm-mm. It's much more intimate. And I think it works in a lot of ways. And this made pretty high up on my list of John Ford films so far. Because this feels a lot less rambunctious and aggressive than a lot of his films. And maybe that is the case as he's getting older. And, I'm expecting to leave this journey still having the same number one John Ford film that I went in with, is The Searchers, which I'll be doing in 2 weeks. But it's great seeing that there is a lot more really good films or great films that he made than just Stagecoach and Grapes of Wrath and The Searchers and Liberty Valance. Because I feel like those are the ones that most people talk about.
Yeah.
But Jess, do you have anything else to add about The Long Gray Line?
No.
Well, what would you like to recommend everybody then? YouTube channel?
Would like to recommend Plainly Difficult. It's a YouTube channel I find really interesting. If you find disasters and the analysis of them upsetting, maybe don't though, because that's the whole channel. But I like it. I think he does a good job. It's very, cut and dry. And he presents the facts in a way that I can understand them, even though I'm not great with physics. I mean, it's not too in-depth with stuff, but I enjoy it.
I've never actually, sat and watched it, but it's certainly been on. And I've heard things and stuff like that,
He's English, so it does catch the old attention.
I would like to recommend new film, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. The juice is loose. And it was a fun time. Is it messy? Yes. But it's the kind of campy, messy, just ridiculousness that, honestly, I wanted back in Tim Burton films, because I feel like it's been since at least Frankenweenie, where I feel like he, in 2012, which was 12 years ago at this point, where I feel like you really got it. Wednesday started showing some of that life too.
It had that old kind of goofy stuff. You're right, it's camp.
It is campy as hell, and from the start where you're flying through the model of, was it Winter River, the hometown, and
Winter Falls,
and Danny Elfman's score starts playing, and you're like, yeah, we're back. And then one film off my watch list, The Adventurer, that Jess and I watched, that we did an episode of the Wasteland watch list on, so check that out when it comes out in around Halloween. I think that's when the episode's coming out, which was a Chaplin film where he played a prisoner escaping and gets up the shenanigans and ruins a schwanky party. So that was a fun time.
He kicks a cop off a cliff.
But Jess, thank you so much for coming on, as always, and talking some John Ford. Soon it'll be Wes Anderson, and I think we'll be much more interested.
Talking a bit. You're welcome, Shane, for being here. Did you say thank you? You're welcome.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.